The story is now complete. Watch carefully and cherish it. The exciting tale begins now. I discovered a message on my girlfriend's phone. "If you didn't have a boyfriend, could we get back together?" She replied with 3 simple words: "Yes, we could." I handed her the chat record and asked her to delete him. She grew annoyed, questioning me. "He's just my first love. We were just reminiscing about the sweetness of youth. What's wrong with that?" She thought I'd be as indulgent as before, spoil her endlessly, willingly play the fool for her. But the next day, she discovered I'd moved out of our apartment, blocked her on WeChat, and left without looking back. A week before, Roy had gotten drunk and called my girlfriend, holding her close in his embrace. My girlfriend, Liu Ryan, hurriedly left my side, yet that very day was the date of my surgery. I waited anxiously in the hospital, enduring the agony of my illness, hoping to see her one last time before the operation, to feel a trace of encouragement. Finally, I managed to reach her on the phone. But all I heard was her frantic yelling at Roy. "He's drunk. I'm worried about his safety. If there's nothing urgent, don't call me again." Then came the hollow sound of a disconnect tone. She was so worried about her white moonlight, her first love, afraid he'd be in danger. Yet she hadn't considered me. In the final moments before my surgery, yearning for even a fleeting glance, a moment of care, if only she could have said, "Good luck with your surgery." After leaving the operating room, my whole body felt numb, lost in the lingering haze of anesthesia. I looked around the empty hospital room, at the blank messages and missed calls on my phone. It felt like the anesthesia had numbed my heart as well. I had never been willing to get angry at Liu Ryan. No matter how she treated me in the past, I always obeyed, loving her with the same intensity as when we first met. But this time, I felt a deep exhaustion. Once I was discharged from the hospital, I temporarily stayed at a friend's place and didn't return to the apartment I shared with Liu Ryan until she showed up at my friend's place, bringing my favorite fruits and 2 movie tickets. It was rare for her to lower herself for me. In the past, no matter how angry I was, I had to calm myself first and then go console her. Right or wrong didn't matter. That's how our relationship had always been. During gatherings with friends, they'd always tease me, saying I was head over heels in love, but I always believed that. As long as I cherished Liu Ryan and gave her my all, she would one day understand my sincerity and treasure my feelings. But this time, even though she had come to make peace, she still stood there, confident and unapologetic. "What, you're just a big guy, and this is all your tolerance? Didn't your surgery go well? Why can't you be accommodating, just like before?" In that moment, I realized something. Liu Ryan. Perhaps she had never truly misunderstood my feelings at all. She knew all along, but my sincerity was like dust in her heart, something she didn't value. On the day of my surgery, just before the anesthesia took full effect, I recalled our 3 years together. As I began to lose consciousness, her cruel words echoed in my mind. "If there's nothing urgent, don't call me again." In the end, I realized, in front of Luo Yi, her current boyfriend, could be discarded without a second thought. Even on the day of my surgery, when I was at my weakest and needed companionship the most, even though she knew, I planned to propose to her after the surgery, to step into a new phase of our relationship. She still abandoned me without hesitation. I couldn't remember how many times this had happened. Since Luo Yi re-entered our lives, she only cared about whether Luo Yi was happy. If Luo Yi got drunk, it was a serious matter in her eyes. But when I needed support for my surgery, she mocked me, saying a real man shouldn't be so weak. The painful truth was clear. In the end, I returned to the apartment with Liu Ryan. Due to my work, I still had many tasks to handle on my laptop, which was back at our place. The moment I arrived, I shut myself in the study, catching up on the work I had missed, till Liu Ryan came knocking on the door. Chang, didn't you say there was something important you wanted to do after your surgery? I planned to propose to Liu Ryan. She knew about it all along. Because weeks before, I took her to pick out the perfect diamond ring. The ring was large and dazzling, blinding to the eye. Something I thought would suit her taste. But Liu Ryan thought I was too predictable, always wanting to ensure my gifts matched her style before I presented them to her, considering if she'd like it or not. But no matter how thoughtful I was, it could never compare to the surprises Luo Yi brought her. I remained silent in the study, and Liu Ryan, not waiting for a response, said, "If you don't answer, I'll just use my key to come in. After this proposal, I'll go with you to meet your parents," she added. With no choice, I replied with a faint acknowledgement. In the past, knowing Liu Ryan valued my proposal like this would have filled me with immense joy. But this time, I felt an unexplainable resistance within. Liu Ryan insisted we go to her favorite restaurant. She made a reservation, and we agreed to meet after work. But I waited and waited until the restaurant had closed, and Liu Ryan never showed up. Concerned for her safety, I called her repeatedly, but each time her line was busy. Eventually, I returned to our apartment through the closed door. I heard Liu Ryan's voice inside. She was singing. Her voice was soft, gentle. She sang beautifully, and it was her singing that first drew me to her. But after we got together, I often pleaded for her to sing. But she never sang for me. Yanyan, back when we were together, you always sang this song for me. Do you remember? Turns out she was on the phone with Luo Yi. I heard his voice on the other end. Just then, a Weibo notification popped up. Luo Yi had posted something today and every day. I'm grateful your voice still remains, that you're still here, along with a video of Liu Ryan singing. It was exactly midnight when I saw that post. Outside, fireworks began to bloom. Ones I had specially arranged for Liu Ryan. With a loud bang, they lit up the sky like thousands of blossoming trees. Radiant and magnificent. Excitedly, Liu Ryan called out to Luo Yi on the phone. There are beautiful fireworks here. Wait, let me open the video to show you. As the fireworks faded, my heart turned cold and empty. All feelings disappeared along with the sparks in the sky. Late at night, Liu Ryan knocked on the study door. I wanted to ignore her, but she kept knocking relentlessly. Eventually, forcing myself, I opened the door in resignation. Her eyes were slightly red, as if she'd been crying. She quickly stepped in, trying to fall into my arms. Instinctively, I moved aside, and this action made her angry. Zizhuan Cheng, what's wrong with you? In her hand, her phone screen was still lit, showing a chat window. The background was a photo of her and Luo Yi, a picture I had once humbly begged her to replace. But she accused me of meddling in her past, and we had a huge argument. In the end, I no longer dared to question her. I thought that if I stayed by her side long enough, she would eventually fall in love with me, that everything would pass with time. But 3 years had gone by, and I was truly exhausted. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't warm her heart. Luo Yi is having some financial trouble, she said. Could you help him out? Seeing me remain silent, Liu Ryan still walked over and took my hand. Her tone softened significantly. After all, he was her old classmate too. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh, not even wanting to look at her. So on the night I was going to propose to you, you thought it was fine to ignore our plans without a word, breaking our date, just to comfort your first love and sing for him? And after you both reminisced about your sweet memories, you're now asking me to help him? What do you take me for? After listening to my words, Liu Ryan still stood there, just as unapologetic as before. He called me, telling me his troubles. I couldn't just leave him hanging, could I? I opened Weibo, raising my phone to show her. If his financial situation is so urgent, how does he still have the energy to post on Weibo to remind me that he exists? Liu Ryan, I'm tired. I have work tomorrow. I pushed her out the door, ignoring her accusations of my heartlessness. In an attempt to show her stance, Liu Ryan moved back to her own place. She took a lot of her belongings with her, but left behind. Coco was Liu Ryan's little dog. But after we got together, he gradually became my dog instead. Whenever he got sick, I'd take him to the hospital in the middle of the night, and it was me who took care of his daily needs. I used to hold Liu Ryan and this little dog close, feeling blissful about our two humans, one dog life. Even though it was tiring, after Liu Ryan moved out, I patted Coco's head, and he seemed completely unfazed by her absence. Taking care of Coco, after all, had always been my responsibility alone. Just when I thought life had settled down, Luoyi showed up at my door. As a man, I think there's no need for you to treat Yanyan this way. I couldn't help but chuckle. The way he called her Yanyan so intimately. You'd think Liu Ryan was his girlfriend. How I treat Liu Ryan is none of his business. Besides, I've already given her my whole heart. I reached out to close the door, but Luoyi blocked it. If you're not good to Liu Ryan, he sneered, I don't mind taking her back. His words were full of provocation. I shot back, still hung up on things that aren't yours? Addicted, are we? Sure enough, it didn't take long. Within moments, Liu Ryan sent me a message saying it was over. Luoyi also texted, taunting, she's not yours anymore. I turned off my phone, feeling an overwhelming sense of noise and chaos. The last time Liu Ryan mentioned breaking up, the memory still lingers vividly. It started when I lost her favorite bag. I had given Liu Ryan countless designer bags, but that bag, that one she treasured above all, after it was lost, she argued fiercely with me and harshly broke up with me. I thought maybe it was a bag she had sewn herself, giving it a unique meaning. So I stayed up several nights and crafted an identical one for her. But unlike the original, I made this bag with extra care, more meticulous, far better than the rough one she used to have. It was an improvement in every way. When I presented the bag to Liu Ryan, she looked at it as if it were the world's biggest joke, then stomped on it viciously. Zhuansheng, don't even try. No matter how well you make it, it will never be the same as that one. She mocked me with hurtful words, and all I could do was silently bear it. Later, I found out that Luoyi was the one who had given her that bag. That's why it was so precious to her. No matter how many luxurious bags I gave her, no matter how well I crafted them, they would never matter. Why did I lower myself so much? After Liu Ryan moved out, I felt a sense of peace I had never known before. It was as if my heart was still numb from the anesthesia of that surgery, unable to wake up. Liu Ryan posted food photos on her social media, while Luoyi shared a picture of her silhouette. She posted the word harmony as a caption, and Luoyi responded, leaving a comment 100 points. These little games, they played them endlessly on social media. If there was one feeling I had left, it was that something inside me was slowly peeling away, piece by piece, painfully raw, yet somehow bringing an unexpected lightness. Then Liu Ryan's mother arrived, bringing her along. Liu Ryan's face looked pale and reluctant, likely here only because her mother forced her. Luoyi came too, obviously trailing right behind her. Despite the issues between Liu Ryan and me, I had no reason to be disrespectful to elders, so I still invited them in with full courtesy. As Luoyi entered, I threw him a scornful glance. Uninvited and without any regard, Liu Ryan looked displeased, reminding me I'm also a host here. I invited him. I was stunned. Even in front of her family, aware of our situation, she showed no hesitation in defending Luo Yi. During the meal, I prepared a few spicy dishes, keeping in mind Liu Ryan's mother's preference. When I placed the food on the table, Liu Ryan thoughtfully brought a bowl of water, reminding me suddenly that Luo Yi, being a true Cantonese, couldn't handle spicy food. But this also brought back memories of when Liu Ryan used to mock me, teasing that a grown man like me was afraid of spice. So I forced myself to eat spicy food to suit her taste, till my stomach could barely handle it. But it turns out true love doesn't require you to change who you are. Luo Yi didn't have to eat spicy food. Liu Ryan would thoughtfully prepare a bowl of water just for him. After my surgery, I was supposed to avoid spice, but she never gave it a second thought. My sacrifices were nothing more than a joke. Luo Yi, smiling, pulled the bowl of water toward him and said meaningfully, "Onion has always been so thoughtful." Indeed, she was thoughtful, just never toward me. I knew Luo Yi said it just to provoke me, but I didn't care anymore. After dinner, Liu Ryan's mother insisted she say, and since she thought highly of me, she always took on the role of peacemaker whenever we argued. Liu Ryan would always go along with it, a scene I had grown all too familiar with. Once her mother left, I followed my usual routine and went to feed Coco. But when I opened the door to Coco's room, he dashed out as if escaping. On the sofa, Liu Ryan and Luo Yi were talking about something amusing, laughing without a care in the world. It was obvious that Coco's sudden appearance disrupted their mood. Sensing an unfamiliar, hostile presence, Coco let out a low growl toward Luo Yi, while Luo Yi simply pointed his finger at Coco, laughing. "Isn't this the dog raised by Zhuancheng?" His laugh carried a hint of mockery. His dog, just like him, keeps everyone at a distance. But before he could finish laughing, the moment those words left his mouth, it was as if Coco understood him and lunged straight at him, teeth bared. Luo Yi let out a sharp scream, his hand now injured. In my mind, I cheered for Coco. "Good job, Coco!" But instead, Coco cried out in pain. Liu Ryan had kicked Coco hard. And what stung even more was that on her feet were the high heels I'd recently bought her. I quickly rushed forward to protect Coco. Coco was terrified, cowering at my feet, his whole body trembling. He looked up at me with tearful eyes, filled with a sadness he couldn't express. I understood then that it wasn't just the physical pain that made him tremble, but the fact that the person who hurt him was Liu Ryan, his once beloved owner. My heart twisted with anguish. Zhuancheng, he bit someone. Why are you still protecting him? Liu Ryan looked at me coldly, her gaze as if she wanted to devour both me and Coco. In some ways, I realized I was just like Coco, truly alike. At least when it came to Luo Yi, we were both the ones abandoned, turning away. Liu Ryan's expression softened into something else. Her face showed concern as she gently rolled up Luo Yi's sleeve. I swallowed the searing anger in my heart, picked up Coco, and tried to head out the door. But Liu Ryan kept chasing after me. She whispered, "Why not just give him away already?" It felt like a cold bucket of water had been dumped over me, a sorrow deeper than words. So that's what she really meant. I covered Coco's ears, turned back and shouted at Liu Ryan. Enough, perhaps I had never spoken to her so harshly before. Liu Ryan looked at me, stunned and in disbelief. With her gaze fixed on me like that, I held Coco close and walked out without looking back. I took Coco to the hospital, and fortunately, the doctor said Coco was only frightened. Nothing serious. On the way back, Coco seemed to sense something, rubbing his head against my face. I tried a few times to give him a reassuring smile, but couldn't bring myself to do it. Scenes from my time with Liu Ryan kept flashing through my mind, one after another. Liu Ryan wasn't worth it. If that was the case, then there was no reason to keep holding on. When I returned home, Luo Yi was gone. Liu Ryan sat in the corner of the living room, barefoot. When she saw me, she ran over barefooted, reaching out to take Coco into her arms. But the moment Coco saw her, he hid in my embrace. I didn't have the energy to deal with her anymore. I kicked off my shoes and walked further inside. Zizhuansheng, Liu Ryan called after me. "You never treated me like this before," she said. I chuckled quietly, without even turning around. "But you've always treated me this way." Back in the study, I opened my phone, where a few property ads popped up. How timely! Actually, since that surgery, I'd already started looking at apartments near my workplace. The only reason I hadn't made a decision yet was because I was waiting. Maybe I was waiting for Liu Ryan to fully crush my hopes. I don't really know. This small home I once cherished with her. Now I just wanted to escape from it as quickly as possible. Perhaps because my attitude was different this time, Liu Ryan finally couldn't bear it any longer. She opened the door to the study and lay down beside me. As she reached out to hold me, I turned away, moving aside. At that moment, a notification appeared on her phone beside us. It was a message from Luo Yi. "I miss you." The photo of them together was still there. In the past, it was like 1,000 needles piercing my heart. Now, I could only find it laughable. I reached out, grabbed her phone, and opened the messages to scroll through. I just wanted to see how far things had really gone between them. Their conversations seemed casual, but were filled with an unmistakable desire to share everything. In truth, Luo Yi had always been a part of Liu Ryan's life. I had just blinded myself to it. As I scrolled further, one particular message caught my eye, bold and painfully clear. "If you didn't have a boyfriend, could we get back together?" Absolutely shameless, disgusting beyond words. And yet Liu Ryan had replied confidently with 3 words. "Of course we could." This message was sent right before she told me she wanted to break up. Liu Ryan looked a bit guilty, reaching out to take the phone from my hand, but her face remained calm and composed. "Chang, let's not fight, okay?" I let out a scornful laugh, handed her the chat record. "Fine, then delete him." She looked as if I had caught her in a lie, taking the phone and, annoyed, questioned me. "He's just my first love. We were just reminiscing about our youthful days. What's so wrong with that?" I nodded in agreement. If it's really so wonderful, and he's still around, then what's the point in reminiscing? Wouldn't it be better to relive those happy memories? If it's truly that beautiful, then stop involving me in it. I took Coco with me and moved out of the place Liu Ryan and I shared. As quickly as possible, I found a new apartment in the city center. In the past, we'd rented far from the city, so Liu Ryan could get an extra half-hour of sleep in the morning, since her job was in a more remote area. Now, finally, I no longer had to spend 2 hours driving every day, back and forth, exhausted from the commute, only to come home and revise planning proposals. The freedom of this new life felt wonderful. In addition, I blocked Liu Ryan on WeChat. She was always the one who blocked me before. Now, I wondered how she felt seeing that red exclamation mark. But I didn't have the energy to dwell on it. The company recently landed a huge project, and as the main person in charge, I was swamped. Finally, on a weekend, Liu Ryan's best friend called me. She told me over the phone that something serious had happened in Liu Ryan's family, and that she wanted to see me. I didn't fully believe everything she said, but I felt that it might be necessary for Liu Ryan and me to meet one last time, to put a final end to this relationship, to uproot these 3 years completely, leaving nothing behind, no lingering ties. When I arrived at Liu Ryan's home, she was in the kitchen cooking. In the past, I never let her cook when I was around. She looked noticeably haggard, her swollen eyes revealing that she must have cried a lot. Liu Ryan's father had been accused of extortion, framed and imprisoned. After multiple unsuccessful appeals, her mother also fell ill and was hospitalized. As Liu Ryan told me all of this, I felt an immense weight in my heart. I finally realized that cutting ties with this relationship wasn't as simple as I thought. I reached out to pull some strings, hired the best lawyer I could find, and accompanied Liu Ryan to the hospital to visit her mother. For a month, I found myself constantly going back and forth between the hospital and a courthouse. I had thought that, given the circumstances, Luoyi would stay by Liu Ryan's side no matter what. Yet in that entire month, I didn't see a trace of him. It wasn't until the day Liu Ryan's father was finally exonerated and released that Luoyi showed up at the hospital, standing at a distance. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see that Liu Ryan was visibly upset, most likely expressing her anger at him. She had never once raised her voice to Luoyi before. This was the first time. I simply held my coffee, watching quietly from afar. This had nothing to do with me anymore. After their conversation, Luoyi left. Liu Ryan walked up to me, her eyes slightly red. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "I'm so sorry." Those 3 words sounded so easy for her to say. So easy, just a few simple words from her lips. But I had endured immense pain. During these days, my heart had been split open, shattered, ground down, and finally pieced back together. Her apology was the last thing I needed. I took Liu Ryan home. As I was about to leave, she suddenly rushed forward and hugged me, pleading for me to bring Coco back to live with her, her voice full of desperation. Humbled in the way I once had been, but I couldn't let her become what I once was, because I knew too well how painful that feeling was. I gently guided Liu Ryan to sit down, comforting her. I promised her that if she ever needed help again, she could reach out to me. But Liu Ryan's tears wouldn't stop. So I went to the room to find her some tissues. When I stepped into the study, I froze for a moment. The entire layout of my study had changed. The succulents I had on the windowsill were gone, replaced by basketball-themed curtains. The whole room was filled with the scent of a men's cologne I'd never smelled before. Beside the bookshelf, a pair of leather shoes were placed. They belonged to Luoyi. I recognized them from a photo he had once posted online. They were a carefully chosen birthday gift from Liu Ryan. But I simply paused and grabbed the tissues that were on the desk. Just as I turned to leave, I realized I should have expected this all along. Liu Ryan appeared behind me, calling softly, looking flustered as if she didn't know what to say. She hurriedly explained, "I mentioned before that Luoyi was having financial troubles. When you moved out, I thought, why leave the study empty?" I turned around and handed her the tissues, but her tears had already dried. "Remember to have Luoyi transfer the rent to me," I said, then left without looking back. After that, Liu Ryan started showing up outside my office more frequently. During lunch, she would bring a homemade bento to my desk. After work, she'd be waiting for me at the front door. The bento box was filled with authentic spicy dishes. Even though I had refused her many times, she still persisted. One day, while grabbing coffee, I overheard my colleagues whispering, "It's so strange. We've known Z for so long, but only now we get to meet his girlfriend. We've only ever seen Z post about her on social media, but she never came to the office before." I walked over and corrected them. "She's not my girlfriend anymore. I used to love showing up at Liu Ryan's workplace, driving over to have lunch with her during her break, or greeting her after work with flowers. I thought all girls would appreciate this kind of attention. But Liu Ryan found me too clingy, said I didn't give her enough personal space, and asked me not to visit her at work again. It wasn't until later that I realized The real reason she didn't want me picking her up was because Luoyi was there. I became insanely jealous. But Liu Ryan simply said, Luoyi isn't like you. He doesn't suffocate me. Thinking back on it, I almost wanted to laugh. She always spoke about boundaries with such self-righteous conviction, as if she had a moral high ground. On another rainy evening after work, I finished up my project, sent it to my boss, Guomin, and got ready to leave. A female colleague asked if I'd mind walking with her, since she hadn't brought an umbrella. This colleague, whom I knew, was quiet and gentle, working in the marketing department. In the past, I would have been afraid of Liu Ryan overthinking things and would have refused, but now I simply saw it as a small favor. So I agreed. And as we walked out of the office together, side by side, I noticed Liu Ryan waiting outside. Her face showed a hint of discontent, along with a questioning look. Still, she came forward and said, I brought the car, let me take you home. I raised the umbrella in my hand and said no need. Besides, I already promised someone else when I got home. Liu Ryan sent me a text message. She said she finally understood how I felt back then. I didn't respond. She'd never truly understand. Her feelings couldn't even begin to compare to a fraction of mine. Days passed uneventfully. Life went on in a simple rhythm. Liu Ryan continued doing the same things as before, bringing me bento lunches, waiting for me after work. She even started showing an unusual amount of concern for Coco. She would ask about Coco's favorite brand of dog food, and would bring over various little toys for him. She even took on the responsibility of walking Coco. It turns out she was capable of all this, after all. So what did that make the past? Back then, in front of Luoyi, she chose to ignore both me and Coco. I never imagined that one day, our roles would reverse. But despite her enthusiasm, I felt drained, exhausted by the thought of responding. Finally, on a rainy night, she showed up at my door, dressed in a seductive dress, dripping wet from the rain. She seemed to have had a few drinks, and began pouring out endless words of longing. It was then that I realized this needed to end. Concerned she might catch a cold, I let her in, handed her a towel, and prepared some ginger tea for her. I hoped that when this relationship ended, we could both part with some dignity. Ah Cheng, you still care about me, don't you? Liu Ryan half lay on the sofa, looking at me with a hazy, unfocused gaze. There was a feeling in her eyes that I couldn't quite bring myself to meet. I knew all too well what caring felt like. It was those restless nights, consumed by uncertainty. It was being so sensitive to every gesture of hers that my heart would tighten with each move. It was enduring wounds upon wounds, and still choosing to give. But this was no longer the same feeling. Before I could respond, her phone screen lit up. I didn't mean to look, but the phone wouldn't stop vibrating. The screen was just as familiar as ever. The same picture of her and Luoyi. Liu Ryan was beaming in the photo. I forced a smile, gesturing for her to answer. Seems like you should sort out your own matters first. That night, I insisted on driving Liu Ryan home, after handling everything at work, to avoid running into her again. I took a leave of absence, but Liu Ryan was relentless, still sending me messages. She called me, messaged me, and even reached out to my friends. In the end, she even contacted my parents. In the past, I'd mentioned Liu Ryan to my parents countless times, always praising her, hoping they'd have a good impression of her. My parents had always wanted to meet my girlfriend, but Liu Ryan was never willing. I'd begged her to meet my parents just once, but she always said she didn't have the time, telling me to wait a little longer. That wait ended up lasting 2 years. Eventually, I realized she just didn't want to meet my parents. She had time to go out with Luoyi, claiming it was just as friends. She had time to accompany Luoyi to his favorite sports games, but no time to visit my family. When my parents arrived this time, Liu Ryan was right behind them, looking as if she'd charmed them completely. They walked in with broad smiles on their faces. During dinner, Liu Ryan kept up the perfect girlfriend act, serving me food, talking effortlessly about all my habits, even telling jokes to amuse my parents. Only heaven knows how much I once longed for this scene, but now it only filled me with fear. After dinner, I pulled Liu Ryan aside into a room. Dinner is over. You should go home. And please don't contact my parents again. Liu Ryan froze, then looked visibly upset. She hadn't expected me to be so heartless. Zizhuancheng, just because of what happened with Luo Yi, are you really going to push me away like this? Weren't you once able to tolerate and forgive me? As soon as she said those words, she immediately realized she'd made a mistake and stopped talking, but in my mind, I could almost hear the words she didn't say. The question hanging there unspoken. Why can't you keep forgiving me now? Why can't you keep looking the other way, letting the scales tip toward Luo Yi, and still adore me, indulge me? Why can't you keep watching me, reminisce about my first love's sweetness? Why can't you be jealous, lose all reason for me? Why can't you bear it a little longer? So she had known all along. She knew I was putting up with her. And that's why she kept testing my limits, again and again. She knew what boundaries were. But because she thought I would endure it, she kept hurting me. So when I was left to face the surgery alone, staring into the abyss, she was by her first love side, spending the entire night without a single call to me. She thought nothing of reminiscing about those shameless memories right in front of me. With a loud thud, I pushed Liu Ryan out the door and shut it firmly behind her. Finally, the world felt quiet. In the following days, just as I'd hoped, Liu Ryan stayed out of my life. But Luoyi started messaging me frequently, sending updates about Liu Ryan's current state and such. Every day, Liu Ryan shuts herself inside our old apartment, refusing to see anyone, not eating or drinking. Luoyi said, his tone indicating just how badly she was faring. One day, after another call from Luoyi, I heard Liu Ryan's faint, almost breathless voice on the other end. Ah Chung, I just want to see you one last time. My heart skipped a beat, fearing she might do something drastic. So I quickly drove to the location Luoyi sent me. When I arrived, I realized it was the park where Liu Ryan and I had our first date. It was here that I had once made a solemn promise to her, vowing to love and protect her always. But that was a lifetime ago. And the old park had since been renovated, replaced by towering skyscrapers. The old playground equipment was still there, abandoned in a distant corner, full of holes. Its liveliness and joy long gone. Just like my feelings for Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan looked as if she had aged overnight. And seeing her condition, I realized that everything Luoyi had told me was true. But I felt no pity, only a strange mix of guilt and resignation. Liu Ryan forced a smile, asking if I remembered this place. How could I not remember? Yes, I remembered, but there was no need to dwell on the past. Wasn't that true? Watching the hopeful look in her eyes, I considered my response carefully and could only think of one thing to say. Yes, I remember, but what's the point in reminiscing? She nodded slowly, disappointment settling in her eyes. Luo Yi grabbed my collar, his face twisted with fury. Through gritted teeth, he snarled, "Can you really be this heartless toward her? Look at the state she's in." In response, I punched him hard. "I've had enough of you." A flash of satisfaction crossed Luo Yi's face, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. I'd always known about the bond between Liu Ryan and Luo Yi. We were classmates, and I'd witnessed their relationship in college. They fell in love. But after graduation, they each went their separate ways, unable to maintain a long-distance relationship. After we graduated, I assumed that Liu Ryan and I, like so many university classmates, would drift apart, like to parallel lines that would never cross again. But then, by chance, we met again in this city. Our lives began to intersect, starting as friends. I'd be there whenever she argued with someone, comforting her when she made up with them. I was genuinely happy for her. Eventually, when she experienced heartbreak on a rainy night, crying so hard she could barely breathe, I realized that she had already carved out a place in my heart. I promised to help her move on, to make her life better and brighter. We worked hard together in the city, starting from nothing, slowly building our lives up. Only then did I dare to confess my feelings. When I told her, she smiled, playfully teasing me, calling my name, and said, "I've known you liked me for a long, long time." After we got together, we did the usual couple things, dinners, movies. We strolled down streets together, shielding each other in storms, walking forward side by side. We shared so many unforgettable moments. I once thought that Liu Ryan and I could stay in love forever, until Luoyi reappeared by her side. Maybe, as Luoyi claimed, it was due to a job transfer. Or perhaps, deep down, he just couldn't let go of Liu Ryan. And that's why he moved to the city. Ever since Luoyi came back, our relationship started going downhill. And not slowly, but at breakneck speed. Was Liu Ryan truly unable to let go of Luoyi? I wanted to know. But maybe not. She had simply grown used to basking in my love, while shamelessly reminiscing about her past, being abandoned over and over. Each disappointment wore me down, until my feelings for Liu Ryan reached rock bottom. So I chose to let go. After successfully closing a big deal, I earned my supervisor's recognition. He wanted to promote me to the company's main office. It was in a major city. I had been offered this promotion once before, but I resolutely turned it down because I couldn't bear to make Liu Ryan go through a long-distance relationship again, even though I knew that even if we were far apart, I would handle it better than Luoyi ever could. But I still didn't want that for her. Wherever she was broken, I wanted to be there to pick up the pieces, to mend her wounds, and to be there for every sweet, bitter, and painful moment she endured. I was willing to bear it all, which is why I never told Liu Ryan about the promotion. But life came full circle, and this opportunity came back to me. And now I had no reason to stay in this city. This time, I didn't tell Liu Ryan. There was no need to tell her. But before I left the city, Liu Ryan came to see me. She brought 2 rings with her. Seeing my surprised expression, she held out the larger ring to me, asking if she could propose to me. It seemed she was prepared for the worst, and she said that if I refused, she wouldn't trouble me again. I found it almost laughable. Twice I had wanted to propose to her, but each time she abandoned me before I could. Once she left me on the cold operating table, and another time she left me amidst the fireworks I had prepared for her. Twice I was left behind on what was supposed to be our path to happiness. I shook my head. Caught off guard, Liu Ryan burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. But seeing her like this, I didn't feel any sympathy. Instead, I remembered the countless times I had silently endured. I never let myself cry in front of Liu Ryan. No matter how deep my pain or frustration, I kept it all inside, never letting my negative emotions affect her. But all this quiet endurance only led to even more unreasonable treatment from her, time after time. Maybe it was that version of myself that deserved sympathy the most. Liu Ryan, let's part on good terms, for real. This time it was truly over. I moved to another city. In the following years, my career flourished, and I experienced a world far broader than I'd ever known before. Occasionally, through old university friends, I would hear news about Luoyi and Liu Ryan. Luoyi had gone bankrupt, falling to rock bottom. He used to enjoy posting vague messages on social media, hinting at things meant to provoke me. But now, he had disappeared completely. I assumed. Life had worn him down to the point he had nothing left. I also heard that Liu Ryan was dating someone new, a man her family had introduced. When I first heard, I was surprised. Back when we were together, she was so hung up on her past with Luo Yi. But after we parted, they didn't end up together. Maybe that's how people are. We crave what we can't have. One quiet afternoon, I stood in the tallest office building, holding a cup of coffee, looking down at the city below, when I received a message from Liu Ryan on WeChat. She said, "I'm getting married. Can we meet one last time?" She added, "Ah Chang, I hope you'll come to my wedding." I opened her profile and selected block. Liu Ryan still hadn't changed her ways, and I had no intention of becoming another Luo Yi. Sometime after that, I met someone new, a woman named Shen Yuchu. He was just about to go find Ji Badao and the others to settle Fang Yuan's account.